When night falls and sound withdraws, the archive remains. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. Morning arrives without color, not because color is gone, but because the world is held under a narrow range of tone. The sky becomes a pale surface with few internal differences. Clouds are present, yet their borders do not insist. Ground below holds a harder shape than it held in warmer months. Air lowers in temperature. Molecules draw closer. Density increases. Movement does not stop, but it becomes less obvious, less turbulent. The atmosphere feels steadier because fewer convective currents rise and fall. Breath leaves the body as vapor. A brief plume forms where warmth meets cold. It expands, thins, dissolves into the surrounding medium. Dissolution is not disappearance. It is mixing until contrast is no longer visible. Winter air carries little scent. Reduced humidity carries fewer traces. The absence of pollen and the reduction of moisture change how distance feels. There are fewer particles to scatter light, fewer suspended droplets to soften edges. Clarity increases. Weight also increases. Not as pressure on the shoulders, not as force pushing down, but as density that resists quick change. A hand moved through cold air meets less softness than it meets in summer. The motion encounters a steadier medium. Sound travels farther. Less moisture absorbs vibration. A step on frozen soil releases a sharp tone that holds together longer. A small sound does not blur into background quickly. It retains its outline as it travels. Metal is touched. Heat transfers immediately. Skin gives energy to steel. The surface equalizes, and then the hand withdraws. The exchange is direct. No meaning is attached. Only transfer and equilibrium. Trees stand without leaves. Branches extend in clean lines. The space between them widens, not because space grew, but because obstruction was removed. Sky becomes visible through structure. Frost forms along branch edges. Ice crystals grow where moisture met sufficient cold overnight. They do not announce themselves. They accumulate molecule by molecule. Light reaches them and scatters softly. The shimmer is not motion, it is angle. Ground holds a crust. Frozen soil fractures when stepped on. The fracture is brief, clean, and audible. The sound is carried by air that does not cushion it. In a distant field, a crow calls once. The call crosses open distance with minimal distortion. Nothing softens it. Nothing interrupts it. The sound arrives intact, then fades gradually. Cold clarifies boundary. It is not drama, it is definition. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The sentence rests in the air and does not warm it. Cold air sinks toward the ground. Slightly warmer air sits above it. Layers form over land without visible seam. The difference is small, but stable. Smoke from a chimney rises, then slows, then drifts sideways. It meets the heavier layer and spreads beneath it, held in place by density. Weight is not seen. It is inferred from behavior. A fence line appears sharper in winter. Posts stand at equal distance. Wire between them remains taut. In summer, vines and leaves obscure relation. In winter, relation is visible as spacing. The line becomes pure structure. Steps across snow compress crystals into a shallow depression. The impression holds its shape longer than it would in warmth. Edges remain defined until wind arrives to redistribute grains. Wind does not erase immediately. It shifts edges grain by grain. The impression becomes less distinct not by collapse, but by gradual reallocation. Breath enters, breath leaves. The pause between them feels longer in cold, not because time changed, but because the air entering the body is noticed more clearly. Cold air makes contact measurable. The field remains, the sky holds, distance becomes legible. Midday arrives without heat. Sunlight is present, but it arrives at a shallow angle. The path of light stretches long across ground. Surfaces receive radiation without absorbing much warmth. Stone and soil remain cold because they have been releasing heat all night, and the day does not return it quickly. The air near the ground warms slightly, then stabilizes. Above that thin layer, colder air persists. The atmosphere becomes vertically organized. A difference exists between air at ankle height and air at chest height. The difference is narrow but real. Cold air clings to low places. Warmth, when it exists, rises and thins. In winter, that rise is limited. Convection weakens. The medium becomes steadier. The steadiness makes small movements more apparent. Exhaled vapor behaves differently depending on height. Close to ground, where denser air rests, the vapor plume lingers a fraction longer before mixing. Higher up, it disperses sooner. The difference is subtle. It is consistent. Sound crossing these layers carries with slight bending. Temperature gradients refract vibration gently. A distant voice may seem nearer because its clarity remains. The ear reads clarity as proximity. Clarity creates a kind of mismeasurement. Distant objects appear closer under dry winter air. Without haze, edges sharpen. A building across a field looks nearer than it would in summer humidity. The eye assigns distance partly by softness. When softness is removed, distance compresses. The world does not move closer. Perception changes. A thin film of ice on water holds a surface stable. Beneath, water continues to move. The motion is slower than in warmer seasons, but not stopped. The ice becomes a lid that hides flow, while allowing sound to travel across its plane. A small crack across ice transmits stress in straight lines and arcs, mapping force distribution. Winter air above the ice remains clear. Sound from the ice travels outward. There is less insect noise, less leaf motion, fewer overlapping disturbances. The field becomes acoustically spacious. Inside a room, winter becomes boundary. Glass divides interior warmth from exterior cold. Frost gathers first along corners where heat escapes fastest. Ice forms patterns that follow microscopic imperfections in the pane. The patterns are not decorative. They are evidence of gradient. A hand placed against the glass feels continuous transition, warm to cool across thickness. The boundary is not a line. It is a band. Light enters through the window at low angle. It travels far across the floor. Shadows lengthen. Objects cast long shapes because the source is low. The shadows appear clean because the air is dry and the light is less scattered. Dust suspended in the beam becomes visible. Particles drift slowly, then settle. In drier air, they fall with less buoyancy. They gather on surfaces. Accumulation is quiet. A table stands, a chair, a cup resting on wood. Nothing moves, yet winter makes the room feel more measurable. Corners are clearer. Distances are more apparent. Outside, the field remains visually unchanged. No growth appears. No decay is visible on the surface. Processes continue under the crust. Roots remain. Water moves below frost line. Life persists out of sight. Winter is not absence of process. It is reduced surface display. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The sentence rests between interior warmth and exterior density. A heater hums briefly, then stops. Silence expands. Not because sound is absent, but because fewer sounds compete. The room holds a steadier baseline. Small noises become distinct. A faint tick of cooling metal, a subtle creak of wood adjusting. Materials respond differently to temperature. Metal contracts quickly. Wood responds slowly. Glass holds cold as a steady state. Fabric traps warmth. The room becomes an arrangement of time constants, how quickly each material changes. Outside, smoke drifts sideways again, tracing the invisible ceiling of inversion. The ceiling is not rigid. It is stable enough to hold shape. Weight remains as resistance. The day does not soften the cold. It merely pauses the decline. Evening arrives earlier than expected. The sun lowers before the body expects it. Light thins. The angle becomes even shallower. Shadows lengthen further, then merge into general tone as brightness declines. As light fades, radiative cooling intensifies. Ground releases stored heat upward into open sky. Without cloud cover to return that radiation, surfaces cool steadily. Frost begins to form again along exposed edges. Air near the ground becomes denser. The layered structure strengthens. Warm air above, if present, becomes separated from cold air below by a stable gradient. The gradient is invisible. Its presence is seen in behavior. Smoke that refuses to rise, fog that gathers low, sound that carries cleanly. Footsteps on snow change character as temperature drops. Colder snow fractures more crisply. Warmer snow compresses with softer sound. The tone is a function of crystalline structure, which is a function of temperature. Breath appears thicker in colder air. The vapor cloud expands, then lingers a fraction longer before mixing. The lingering is not sentiment. It is physics. Denser air slows the diffusion of the plume's boundary. Sound of a distant train crosses frozen ground. In summer, leaves absorb and scatter its higher frequencies. In winter, fewer obstacles exist. The sound arrives more intact. It fades slowly, thinning into distance. A branch breaks somewhere unseen. The crack is short and clean. It travels far. The ear receives it and locates it imperfectly because clarity reduces the usual cues of distance. The sound feels closer than it may be. The air's dryness also alters light. With reduced moisture in the upper air, starlight appears steadier. Fewer particles scatter it. Points remain points. The sky becomes high and sharp. Stars appear with increased contrast, not brighter by intention, but less diminished by the medium they travel through. Distance becomes visible in the clarity of the points. A faint star that would be lost in humid air becomes present. Inside the room, the window becomes colder. Condensation forms where interior moisture meets the cold pane. Droplets gather and freeze. Frost lines thicken. The pane records the gradient. A hand placed near the window senses cold radiating from glass. Radiative heat transfer occurs silently. The body loses warmth to the surface even without direct contact. The loss is gradual. It is measurable. Breath slows as the day ends. Inhalation draws cold air into the body. The air warms as it descends. The exchange is continuous. The body becomes a small engine maintaining internal temperature against an exterior medium that does not offer warmth. Between breaths, The pause becomes noticeable. The pause is not empty. It is the moment where exchange stops briefly and then resumes. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The sentence settles into that pause. Below the frozen ground, water continues to move. Soil insulates deeper layers. Roots remain intact. Flow persists beyond visible frost. Winter does not stop movement. It hides it beneath a stable surface. The field above is quiet. The processes beneath are continuous. The difference is visibility, not existence. The air outside grows steadier. Wind diminishes. Without wind, temperature layers remain more stable. The sky holds its clear surface. The ground holds its crust. The atmosphere becomes an unmoving container. Weight remains as the medium's refusal to change quickly. Late night stabilizes. Temperature reaches its lowest point before dawn. Surfaces hold cold with persistence. Metal contracts and then holds. Wood releases heat slowly. Stone remains a reservoir of earlier sunlight, now exhausted. The field becomes a record of heat loss. Radiative cooling continues. Energy leaves surfaces into open sky. Where cloud cover exists, the cooling slows. Where sky is clear, the cooling accelerates. The difference appears as frost thickness, as ice growth, as the steadiness of air. Air rests over land in dense equilibrium. The inversion layer persists. Smoke from a distant chimney spreads under its ceiling like a quiet, horizontal river. Sound travels cleanly. A small disturbance, a door, a footstep, a dog's call, maintains its outline longer. The night becomes acoustically spacious because fewer overlapping noises exist. Fewer insects, fewer leaves, less humidity, less interference. Clarity can feel like closeness. Distant lights appear nearer because haze does not soften them. The eye reads sharpness as proximity. The world does not move inward. The medium has changed. The body, now still, produces warmth from within. Fabric traps heat and creates a microclimate near skin. This microclimate is thin. It is enough. Outside it, cold air holds density steady. Breathing becomes slower. Cold air enters and warms along the way. Exhalation carries moisture outward. Vapor forms briefly and then dissolves. Each breath is an exchange between two mediums, the dense exterior and the warm interior. Between breaths, air rests within the lungs. The pause holds. It is a structural interval. Without it, breath would become continuous strain. The room holds quiet objects. A cup on wood, a table, a chair. None of these carry meaning. They carry mass. In winter, mass feels more present because the medium around it is clearer. The window holds frost patterns, which slowly change not by melting, but by minute rearrangement as temperature shifts by fractions. The glass records the world's gradient without intention. Outside, frost grows along branches. Ice crystals extend. Growth is silent and incremental. It is not decoration. It is deposition. Stars hold position. Their light reaches ground through reduced moisture. Distance becomes visible as a field of points separated by vast intervals. If the sky were filled without space, no star would be seen. It is distance that permits clarity. Winter air is weight without pressure, not a hand pushing down, a medium that holds itself steady. Land rests beneath air. Air rests above land. Exchange continues. Heat leaving, cold settling, breath trading warmth for density. True wisdom cannot be captured in words. It is found only in the silence between them. The sentence fades like vapor, not suddenly, but by mixing until it becomes indistinguishable from the air. Night remains. No instruction is required. No urgency exists. Only structure. Only interval. Breath enters. Breath leaves. Between them, winter air steady and dense, holding distance, holding boundary, holding the world in reduced motion until morning returns again without color and without announcement.